Welcome to Wimmer's Wilderness. I'm your host, George Wimmer. I have 30 years of volunteer work, community organizing, and 16 years in local government, 12 of those as mayor. Wimmer's Wilderness is an informed look at politics, community, government, environment, and education from a local perspective. So today's week review, we're going to have our video feed going on as well as recording this episode. And just kind of playing around with this. The background's a little bit different than the last few videos. I'm just gonna see what works, what doesn't work here doing this. So hopefully we'll get this all synced up. You can see the video of this. It'll be on our Wimmer's Wilderness Facebook page, as well as our website, wimmerswilderness.org, and our YouTube channel as well. The podcast will be up anywhere you listen to podcasts, everywhere from Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, just a bazillion different places. If you don't have a particular favorite place to listen to it, you can catch it over on our website, wimmerswilderness.org, or just simply do a Google search of Wimmer's Wilderness Podcast, and you'll get dozens of places you can listen to it at. So today we're going to talk a little bit about social media. Quite a few stories. There's always stories every week, about how social media plays a positive role, negative role. Usually it's a negative role. So I'm going to kind of discuss that a little bit, bring in some personal experience when I was in elected office, and really try and find, as I had written about a week ago, who really is to blame. So social media, they get the blame for a lot of things, whether it's election interference, this cancel culture nonsense, whether you think people should be have their careers ended because they said something. Now, if you do something, that's a whole different thing. But there's too many comedians and writers and things like that have now been kind of shut down because, frankly, a lot of what they do is offensive, but that's part of what they do. And simply because you don't particularly like what they're saying or doing shouldn't mean that they can no longer do that. But anyway, so social media, kind of the, going after people there as well. And that causes the basic disintegration of communication between people. You're afraid, sometimes of what you can say or can't say without people, globbing onto you and ending what it is you're trying to do. And trust me, there are plenty of people who I don't want to listen to or hear from or whatever, so I simply don't listen to them. Now, if they're in positions of power, if they're taking that, it's one thing to deliver, a terrible joke about something, but if you're in a position where you're actually, causing harm to somebody's career or forcing them to do things that they shouldn't do or don't want to do, that, of course, is, illegal in most cases as well, but those things should not occur. So is it social media's fault, people's fault? Where do we go with this? And is it fair that social media platforms are to blame? And I don't think so. I really don't. And I also think that I have a good feeling where that blame should go. So let's start with a bit of history here, especially for all those who want to, take Zuckerberg and throw the shackles on him for unleashing Facebook on the world, or, the next congressional hearing where they'll call up, Jack, the founder of Twitter, or Zuckerberg for Facebook, and they'll call them up and, they'll each do their normal opening statement about how wonderful their platforms are, how they're working to try to improve to make it better, all that kind of stuff. And then, each senator or Congress member, House member will simply go into their, if they might have 5 minutes to speak and 4 minutes of it is, badgering questions and giving the witness a chance to maybe get a word in edgewise, which, leads us all to think it's pretty much political theater anyway. So instead of, really focusing on it, let's look back a little bit and see where we've come from. And we've had a history in this country of, papers that have been filled, papers, magazines, heck, even your local pub, tavern, coffee house, whatever, of all kinds of terrible lies and ridiculous things that were being spread. And they were being spread to fertile minds, okay? People who wanted to think the worst of, whether it was a political person, whether it was your local elected official or, celebrity or whatever it is. Too many people want to believe the worst about things. So the idea of, freedom of speech, it's a cornerstone of our republic. The idea that anyone, and at the beginning when, that First Amendment was passed, what they really meant was landowning, white guys. But anyway, being able to get up and say whatever you wanted to say without having any governmental interference or repercussions for that. Okay. And this is another thing with freedom of speech that I think people have gotten way out of bounds on. Freedom of speech is freedom from government persecution. It's not freedom from if you say stupid stuff. Okay. And I believe you should have the right to say stupid stuff if you want, as long as it doesn't lead to, bad actions. But if you say something stupid and you have a corporate sponsor for something, they have the absolute right not to support you anymore. That's not cancel culture. Those are consequences. That's not anything against your First Amendment rights, because First Amendment rights have nothing to do with personal or, commercial type interest. Okay. So we need to be very clear on that. The First Amendment protects you from government interference or penalizing you for what you're saying. Okay. And when you kind of go back to the founding of the Republic, we can all imagine a guy, in the town square. Many places don't have a town square anymore, but, town square with his tri-cornered hat, debating somebody about, whether it's the high ideals of the Republic or listing his grievances about the local selectmen or, saying, hey, my neighbor is just the worst person in the whole wide world. Those discussions happen. They still happen today. But either way, it was just kept local. You had newspapers that would publish terrible things about political candidates. I mean, the race of the 1800 race between Jefferson and Adams is one that's often referenced because there were terrible things written about both of them. Some of them ended up being true, like Jefferson keeping one of his slaves as a concubine for years. That actually ended up being true. But there were just a lot of terrible things that would go back and forth because these papers, pamphlet writers, they pick sides, just like news organizations, media outlets do today. Whomever was representative of the sides of the publisher of that particular paper, they would say great things. So if you were somebody who supported Adams, he walked on water and Jefferson was the devil and vice versa. So that hasn't changed. It's really the same. Okay. Now, if we get back to social media, the idea behind the concern of social media is that it takes, each one of those individual town squares and each one of those individual people, and it amplifies them. It can amplify them to thousands of other people who are like-minded, and then you start getting larger collections. And much of what is said is offensive. It's, full of lies, it's sexist, it's racist, all of that, okay? But that is still protected speech, again, unless it leads to some, harmful actions. If they're on there trying to organize, burning down a church or a synagogue or something like that, that obviously is illegal. Saying terrible things about race, however horrific and terrible that is, it's still protected speech. So, is it when that crazy guy from each community gets connected to all the other crazy guys, and then you have thousands of them, that somehow it takes that and raises it, and I hate to use the word raise here, but amplifies, maybe that's a better word, and makes it a much worse situation, okay? If you have 100 guys saying horrible things, is that worse than one person saying horrible things, okay? So at the beginning, I mentioned I had been tormented on social media, okay, for years when I was mayor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and kind of put that into context, and then also discuss where I think the real fault of it lied, because that happened on social media, right? Very few, maybe 3-4 times in my entire 12 years as mayor did I have anybody actually come up and say to me, XYZ, negative thing. Was 99.9% stuff that was said on social media. But it was really intensified in the last 2 years when the city council, the entire city council, by the way, had voted to annex properties that were surrounded by the city. And somebody who was benefiting from that situation wasn't in the city. They lived there. Technically, their property was township property, so their taxes were less, but they were surrounded by the city. They're benefiting from police protection. The road that went in front of their house that the driveway connected to was a city road, and over 20 years, that city road had been improved multiple times, and their neighbors were paying, thousands and thousands of dollars each time to improve that road, but they didn't have to pay a penny. Okay. Not 1 cent, because they weren't within the city. So we moved to rectify that. Well, then, that individual and others decided to create a whole network of just terrible lies and ridiculousness. And I'm going to tie it back to one of the great projects that we did in the city at the time. Was we brought our first hotel into the city. And I remember I was out campaigning in 2018 for re-election as mayor, and I came up to this house, and there's this lovely lady talking, and she goes, "Why are you lying to us?" And I go, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" And she said, "Why are you lying to us? You're not building a hotel. You're building a Somali refugee camp." And okay, first I ever heard of that. Obviously it wasn't true. We were building a hotel. It was, well publicized. There are contracts in place, everything like that, right? So that particular lie tied into all kinds of stuff that we have to unpack. First of all, just the basic lie. All right, we were building a hotel. That's what was being built. It's been up now for several years. It's going great. It's a wonderful project for the community. It's allowed a lot of other commercial projects to occur, and it's just been a great keystone project for the city. But why was it a Somali refugee camp? Well, one, clearly it was meant as a racist trope, right? Somalia is in Africa, so you had a lot of people who weren't white by this lie who would be brought into the community, and that unfortunately seemed to have met a lot of fertile ground, which unfortunately was just a ridiculously terrible thing for people to be thinking that. Secondly, Somalis, for the most part, are believers in Islam, so you have a fair amount also of Islamophobia. So you have those two terrible things going on here, beyond the basic, just fundamental flat lie that it wasn't this great economic development project. It was something completely different. So when you have something like that, is it the people who created the lie's fault? Is it Facebook, because this is where it was? And, it was great because, not great in the, hey, thumbs up great, but the tragic, they were really thinking and planning this, but they would have, things on there saying, "Did you hear," because they won't just come out and say that I said it or did these things, because then they could be, liable for that. But what they would do is they would say, "Did you hear the interview where Mayor Wimmer talked about this Somali refugee camp?" Which they're saying, "Did you hear it?" So they're not saying that they heard it. They are not saying that they knew about it directly, but they get the idea out there, right? So there's whole orchestrated thing. So obviously a fair amount of blame goes on their shoulders, right? Because they're the ones who created this lie and this nonsense. Facebook, now they've gone really in depth about trying to get much better control. But they've added a lot of hoops. As a small business person now, using Facebook for part of my marketing and that kind of thing, there's a lot more hoops to go through than ever I had to on the political side. But now they've gotten very intense on the political side, and that's kind of gone over into other areas on their platform. But is it their fault that this was out there? And again, I think it's a platform. Does it make it a lot easier for people to hear the nonsense and to say the nonsense? Absolutely. But the real kicker in all of this, I had been in the community for a very long time and had tremendous success in economic development. And, you may not like what I ever said, but, I didn't lie. Okay. And So for this stuff to find fertile ground, a lot of it had to do with the people who were believing it. And that's where I think a lot of the responsibility for this rests. Okay. It's not the particular platform. Yes, it allows a greater audience. It allows, in essence, more harm to be done. Okay. Most newspapers aren't the terrible newspapers in the 18th and early 19th hundreds in the United States. I mean, there's plenty that are still what they would call yellow journalism, where they would taint what they were doing and picking political sides. But local papers wouldn't run this kind of stuff because, one, it's not true, and it would be they would have a financial responsibility for publishing it. So, yeah, maybe Facebook or Twitter or whatever has kind of a 10% into it. People who created this are just completely ridiculous, irresponsible, small individuals. And so they certainly have some responsibility in the whole thing. But none of this would matter if people who vote, so voters, citizens, people who live in our country, in every country, people in general, right? If people would not be so eager to believe the worst in others, okay? And when you come up with such a trifecta as this ridiculous idea that, a Somali refugee camp was being built covertly, okay? Having a Somali refugee camp might be a good thing, right? But the fact that it was being done covertly and behind everybody's back, and you would literally have needed dozens of people to be in on the lie, right? So there's just no way on any planet did that particular lie make any sense at all. But yet so many people, I was asked about it so many times, and they took the initial position that it was true. And it's just crazy, right? So even that, having that have happened to me, and there were just so many others don't even have time to go into, but I don't hold Facebook responsible for that. I don't hold Twitter or any other social media platform that it was put on. Yeah, the people who are doing it are lying out of every orifice of their body. But you know what? Liar's going to lie. It's the people who believe it. That's where the real harm comes in. And that's where, people who are trying to con you out of $50, or people who are trying to get you to believe something that's not even remotely true. That's where that's why those things occur, because people are willing to believe that kind of thing. So if the consumers of social media are going to continue to believe this nonsense, then you know what? We're all going to suffer for it in the end. It may cause great damage. It's going to end, public service careers when it comes to elections. But it's not those social media platforms' responsibilities. Now, the algorithms used in some of these social media platforms, which do seem to show that certain type of, just pure fantasy, negative fantasy, insane stuff does seem to rise in people's news feeds. That is an area, okay, that can that can be directly their issue, and that is something that definitely needs to be worked on and fixed. But we as individuals need to get out of our negative disposition. Okay, we've got to stop feeding that. Okay, I didn't look up the author of the quote right offhand, and I can't remember it, but it said that I think it was Churchill, but we'll attribute it to him at this point. But that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets a chance to put its pants on. Okay. And one other quote about lying that I think hurts, on reputations and that is that when somebody lies and tries to destroy reputation, it's like opening up a pillowcase full of feathers, right? You open it up into the breeze and it flies all over the place, and you can never get it all right back in there again. So even if you're able to prove that all the idiocy isn't true, you can never get everyone back to believing you. You can never undo the damage that has been done. Okay. So I'm putting a lot of onus on people who are listening to this right now to stop the negativity as a default position. And then here's a quick test, right? And I ask this, kind of try to work it into conversations every once in a while. And I say, well, do you call this thing a traffic light or do you call it a stoplight? Right? So many people go, we hit another stoplight. Okay. Or, we got stoplights coming up. It's a traffic light. It's a green light, it's a yellow light, and it is a red light or a stoplight. But so many people look at that, negative and just refer to it always as a stoplight versus a traffic light. So, and again, that might seem like such a small, little insignificant thing. But when you look at how we use language and how we perceive information, and, there's a gazillion papers written on how, we bring our own baggage to a decision, or, we look at things through our own political spectrum or religious spectrum and all those things. And all those things are very, very true. But when it comes to social media, whatever form it is, and listening to anything, heck, listening to podcasts, you should be critical of what you're listening to. Ask questions. Don't take everything at face value. And gather information from lots of different sources. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on. We've had a lot of this in the news in this last week or two from, whether it's Democratic, Republican, all these different things. Everybody now who ends up losing a sponsor or losing, a job for different things. They talk about it's cancel culture this, cancel culture that. And again, it's one of those terms. Hopefully by next year we'll be over and moved on, I guess, to some other ridiculous term. But oftentimes it's just consequences for bad behavior, or not even bad behavior. You know what? You might be absolutely right about something, and your employer or whatever it might be just might not want it to be a topic of discussion, and decide that, hey, you know what? You're no longer here. So we've got to, take a look at what it is that we're doing from a social media standpoint, and try not to ever get into the mob of social media of piling onto this or piling onto that. And we see it every single day. So thanks for listening. I hope that you guys, well, I don't know if this is a podcast that I would say that, enjoyable, but hopefully it made you think about a few more things. And we'll have another podcast up here the end of next week as well. And then we're lining up some interviews too. So we'll have that podcast schedule that we've talked about continue to roll out, as well as trying to work in some good, fun, and educational interviews. So thanks a lot for listening, guys. And thank you so much for watching this. I have notes I go off of, so that's why, and I don't really like looking at the camera. So it's basically just kind of capturing what we do here on video. It's not playing to the video. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you for joining us today. Help us spread the word by telling your friends, family, and heck, even your frenemies that they can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Luminary, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio. Pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you're going to find Wimmers Wilderness. To learn more about us, go to wimmerswilderness.org. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wimmers Wilderness.